Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, good morning. It's lunchtime here in Melbourne. Everyone around the world obviously is got different times. I've just had a bit of a pre-show which will be cut out when you're watching this, so later on. But I've got Casper, Jerry that's watching. We've got Socrates, Stuart is there, Marcus is here, Oreo. There's a lot that we've just joined us, so it's great to see that you're all watching, guys, and we'll have a good discussion, I hope. So make sure you do all chime in to say ask some questions, because I will stop and we'll talk about some things as we go along. I will stop for questions, and I'll also leave a point at the end where we can have questions as well. I hope you've been following the discussion I've got about setting up your photography business. We've had 2 weeks roughly on hardware, and I've only got basically one more thing now to talk about in the hardware, which is my bags and the way I lug the gear around, which I'll be showing next week. And then after that, we're going to start going through actually setting up the business, how we do it all with things like marketing and software, and how you set up a website and all these sort of things. So we'll be going through that starting from next week sometime. Won't be putting up much over the weekend because I've got a workshop tomorrow I'm doing on off-camera flash, which will be here in my studio. This is actually my studio you're looking at now. This is just the office part to the studio. This has been built separate to the house, and I've got a studio just right behind me through the door there. There's that's where my studio is. But I'll take you around in the thing, and I'll show you how it's all set up with my storage and everything in the workshops that are coming up. So what I thought I'd go through first today is basically some news, because I wanted to talk about a few things that have been on the news over the last week or so that I've basically looked at when I've been online. So I thought I'd start off first going through Frono's issues with banding, because this has been a big thing that's been talked about over the last week or so, because I really can't believe what has actually been put here, and I'm a little bit surprised that Frono put up the images that he actually put up, and we'll see what you guys say about it in the discussion too. But the interesting thing is, he said that he had something like, I don't know, 2% or whatever it was of images that were no good and were showing this banding from this soccer match. And it really is interesting, because the issues that he was showing were I think completely unfounded. Just let me see if I can open up DP Review, because I noticed they also had an article about this morning. Because I want to sort of look at this too with you. Yeah, it's here. So let's have a look at this too. So Frono's was showing this banding issue, and Carl said clickbait, and I think it is basically that as well. Mel said, happy belated birthday, thanks mate. And because what he was showing here, that you can clearly see that there is banding coming through these areas through the image, and anyone can see that there is banding there. I mean, he showed it on his major image here, and you can see that it's coming through here. And there's also banding that he's brought up that coming on the screens coming back. DP Review have talked about this in detail, explaining why this has actually happened, and it even came through on the this guy's face. If you look at the image through there, you can see that it's actually on his face. So what was happening was there was these big TV LED screens that were surrounding the ground are what's apparently has caused the problem. So this is a really interesting article, but the thing that I think that this is clickbait is because if you want to prove any camera has faults, you can prove any camera has faults. There's no doubt about it. I could also prove it as well on any camera if you look for it. But clearly, he has stated in this video, and if you watch it, I've put the links in the description down below, but he's stated in this that all of his images that were shot at 1/4000th of a second. Now, I don't know any sports shooter that shoots 1/4000th of a second. You're not trying to stop a jet here. This is the thing that I think is ridiculous, because his ISO was pushed to some extreme upper limit. From what I've researched, now I'm not a sports photographer, but from what I've researched, most sports photographers will be shooting around the 1,000th to 1,600th of a second, which is enough to easily stop soccer. Now, sometimes you may have to push that up if you're doing extreme sports and things, but 1,000th of a second is clearly enough to shoot soccer. And the issue is that when he said he shot 1,600th of a second, and he mentioned that in his video, he said there was no banding. So I think really that this is a non-issue, and I can't understand why he's trying to say that it was an issue. And he's mentioned banding 30,000 times if you watch that video review. And this is why I think this is clickbait, because he's clearly tried to get this banding. He's probably manipulated the shutter speed until he's seen it. Now, I'm not saying that's exactly what he did, but if it was right at 1,000th of a second or 1,600th of a second, why didn't he leave it at that? Why did he have to push that upper limit to 4,000th of a second? If you read this DPR review article, they say that you will also get banding even with your normal shutters, not the electronic shutter on the D4S or whatever. You'll get them as well if you push the shutter speed to the right exposure. He wasn't shooting at the same shutter speed with his Canon or Nikon gear, whatever he was using. So I think he's deliberately shot this to make this fail. And clearly, there is no reason to shoot a soccer match at 1/4,000th of a second. That is ridiculous. And like I said, he's not trying to stop a jet here. He's just trying to capture a soccer match. There's no reason to push his ISO up so high, which immediately when people were looking at the images, they were saying they were grainy. Well, of course they were grainy. He's shooting at 4,000 ISO. So I know I'm going a bit crazy here, but I just hate it when people start to review things, I think, negatively, when clearly there's not really an issue with that camera. You will naturally find banding if you keep searching for it, and that's the thing. There's other reviews out there that are talking about the cameras being a non-issue with banding, so I just think this is clear clickbait. So let me know what you actually think about that, guys, because I think that this was just crazy, what he's actually saying here. And naturally, all of these people that hate Sony have got onto this saying, it's no good for sports, etc., etc. Who is going to use 1/4,000th of a second in a soccer match? Clearly, if you're using a football match, I went to an A9 opening discussion here the other day, which was ran by Sony, and they had a guy there that shoots. We have AFL. It's our football in Australia. He shot with the A9 with the 70-200 lens, or it might have been the new one that's just been released, the 100-400. And he had no issues at all, and that was shot at night time. And football is incredibly fast. It's much faster than soccer, Australian football. And he had no issues with banding or anything. I spoke to him after that talk, and he said he had no issues at all. So clearly, Fronos has tried to find this, and he's shot at some ridiculous shutter speed. Max Urav also showed banding, but he also pushed for it. Now, he wasn't trying to say it was bad, but he did push that shutter speed up when he had the initial review, and he said that he saw some banding as well. But clearly, it's only if you're going to start pushing this shutter speed right up there. Like I said, in a soccer match or a football match, you're not going to be using 1/4,000th of a second. Let me just read up here what a couple of people are saying. Kern said, hi David, have you ever tried the Fujifilm X100F? No, I haven't. Look, I'd love to try Fuji one day. I really like the look of their cameras, but I haven't ever tried them. So they do seem to be a really, really nice camera. At this stage, I'm just, like I said, linked with Sony, but like I said, I'd change in a heartbeat if something better came out for me. The only reason why I never sort of even looked at Fuji at the time was because I wanted to go full frame. That's important for me for the type of work that I shoot. And also, I'm heavily now involved in video, so that's the reason why I haven't gone down the Fuji line, that I went from the Nikon to Sony. Carl said he found a speed that interacted with the LED displays. And I think you're right, Carl. I think that's what's actually happened here. And if you did move the shutter speed up and down, it disappeared. And that's what he said. If he was shooting at 1600, there was no banding. So why wouldn't you have just shot the whole lot at 1600? Like I said, he's looked for that banding. And like I said, if you watch that video, he mentions banding 20,000 times. It's clear clickbait. Mitch said, totally agree with you. If a Canon or Nikon were under the same microscope, they'd be labelled horrible cameras. True, and this is the thing. I don't know why. The Sony A9 has scared so many people that it's got so much hate out there. It's ridiculous. And I think people just need to move on and just get out shooting. And again, like I said, if I wanted to, I could grab a Nikon and Canon and find errors with it as well. If you look for the errors, you'll find them. But like I said, what photographer is going to be doing that? What photographer is going to be shooting with those fast shutter speeds in a soccer game? There's no need for it. I love the look of their cameras. Think Fuji are good for travel, and yes, and they are. And I love the ergonomics of the Fuji cameras too, the way they've got their controls all on top. So that wise, the ergonomics, it can't be beaten. That's for sure. I agree with you totally. Mel says, I used to shoot sport, track and field, baseball, and we tried to get the best shutter speed at the lowest possible ISO to get the shutter speed for image quality, 1/500 to 1/1000th. And that's right, Mel. And that's, like I said, I'm not a sports shooter, but I do shoot dancing, and they're jumping very fast. And I wouldn't shoot that sort of shutter speed either. It's like I said, he wasn't. What was he trying to do? Stop a jet? It's ridiculous. 1/1000th would have easily been enough. 1/1600th is definitely enough, and he said there was no banding at those shutter speeds, so it's a non-issue. He shouldn't have posted that video. Mel said, David, what can you say with the new Canon 6D Mark II coming out, and what do you think Sony will be coming out with the A7 II? Well, A7 III. Well, I think, to be honest, Mel, I think the Canon is a bit of a fail for me. They've only used the UHS 1 slot in the card slot, which I think is a big issue, because if they did want to put 4K on that camera, it's going to have an issue due to the speed of that card. Because they can use probably Magic Lantern. Well, they may come out with a Magic Lantern 4K for that camera. So that's a bit of an issue. Also, the focusing, I think, is not very good in the fact of the number of your nodes that are actually across the screen. Your points are just more or less dead centered, so that becomes a problem. But mainly having 4K for me is an issue with that camera. I think Canon, that they've shot themselves in the foot again. I really can't understand why Canon would do that. They had an ideal opportunity here, but once again, they don't want to bastardize their cameras that are further up the scale, so they're trying to force you to get the Mark IV or something like that. But I think it's very short-sighted, and it's just something I think silly. The A7 III, I think, clearly is probably going to be well, I'm hoping it's a mini version of the A9. I'm still thinking they probably won't put the 2 card slots in that, so that's what I'm thinking probably will happen with the A7 III. Because they have to make a difference between that camera and the A9. If they made it too similar, people wouldn't buy the A9. So I think they're going to still have that big flagship of the A9. The A7 III probably will have similar focusing, but it's not going to have the speed, and I think they'll probably keep the dual card slots off it. Let me just scroll down here because these are coming pretty quickly. Stuart said, I shot surfers with the A9 with a 70-200 between 1/800 and 1/1000th with no issues. Yeah, and Stuart, the issue here is too that obviously clearly that LED lighting, because they've gone close to those lighting, has caused that issue. But like I said, it's a non-issue because he shouldn't have been shooting at that shutter speed. Carl said, any focal plane shutter will interact with display monitors if you find the right speed. And that's exactly right, Carl. Kieran said, thanks for talking about those Eldachrome products in the previous video. If you go back to my previous video, you'll start to see all the Eldachrome stuff I was showing for video, and it's an amazing stuff. I'm not sponsored by them at all. I don't even get kickbacks through the affiliates through Amazon because they're not in there. But yeah, have a look at the video. They're really good gear. Very useful. How much do they usually cost? I'm not sure if asking questions that long go along with the discussion. Just join. No, that's fine, Kieran. You go to their website. I put the link on that. It might have also been in the questions. I'm not sure. But if you go to eldachrome.com, you'll find all the prices of their gear. It's not cheap. But it's not that expensive either for the quality that you're getting. I've found it is really good quality. You can get some cheap Chinese knockoffs too that I found on eBay, but I don't think they'll last as well as the Eldachrome ones do. That's why I've stuck Excuse me, that's why I've stuck with Eldochrome. Casper said, have you tried the 100 STF? No, I haven't. I wouldn't mind to try that. The only thing that stops me from really trying that is its lack of real speed, because it's actually around about, I think it's a 5.6, isn't it? It's rated at 2.8, I think, but it's actually around about a 5.6. So I think it's probably going to be a little bit slow for me. That's the reason why I haven't tried that lens. The results seem to be beautiful, but that's the reason I haven't gone for that yet. Marcus said, on a totally different note, APS-C versus full frame, and anyone who thinks full frame is the greatest, check out a video by Zach Arias. You know what, Marcus? I actually don't think it is, and I have no issue with APS-C at all. The only real difference for me is that it's easier on full frame to get the real depth of field, because if you want to get the real depth of field with APS-C, you have to use a really, really fast lens. I mean, a really fast lens. I mean, if you're talking about a Panasonic GH4, if you want 2.8, you've got to use something like a 0.95 lens. So that's the main difference for me, and also noise too, because I've had a number of cameras. I had the GH4, and I used to use that. The reason why I got rid of that was because of its low light performance, but that's not APS-C. The A6500 I've got is very, very good in noise, but it still doesn't match my A7R2 or my A9, definitely. So the full frame will give better noise, and that's the thing. It will give better low light. So, but clearly, there's no issue. The quality of APS-C cameras is amazing. I love my A6500 and the A6300. Let's have a look too. Kieran said, why did you choose A7R2 over the A7S2? Because my main part of my business is photography. So I do fusion, but the fusion is secondary to that. The main part of my work is photography, Kieran. So that's the reason why I went for the A7R2. The file size of the A7S2 is just not good enough. And the video aspect of the A7R2 is good enough for me. And the A9 is incredible in the video. So that's the reason why I haven't gone for the A7S2. It's the file size that was the issue. If I'm shooting formal portraits or beautiful landscapes and things like that, I want the file size of the A7R2. Even it's clearly even better over the A9 if you're dealing with just portraits or landscapes. Mel said, agree on the 6D2, no 4K. I know that I can't believe Canon did that. I think it's stupid. Now, what we might do is I just want to move on and then we'll come back to these questions, guys. So you can keep asking them and I'll scroll back. Another thing too that I wanted to sort of talk to you about was this article that was shown on its SLR Lounge. So clearly what it's saying is there are issues if you're using adapted lenses with the Sony A9. I mean, they're saying it's not really a problem, but it's just not ideal. And this is why, for me, I haven't used adaptive lenses. I'm not going to go through this whole article with you, but if you do actually do it, read it, it's saying that you just lose some of the focusing functions. So have a look at that, because it's an interesting article. Like I said, I've put that in the description down below, so you can read that in your own time. And it's a really good article talking about focusing with these longer lenses. Now, clearly Sony is going to address this. You just have to wait. Possibly the end of this year or definitely next year, they'll be bringing out longer lenses that will address all of these issues. They wouldn't have released the A9 as a sports camera if they weren't going to release lenses to support it. So I think we just have to wait, and they will come. But at this stage, it's clearly saying that if you want all of the functionality that the A9 will offer, any Sony camera really, using adapted lenses is probably not the way to go. But I've put that in there so you can have a look at that as well. Another thing too, which I looked at that was just released, was I saw this on Brian Smith's pictures. He actually said that there's a new Lensbaby, this Velvet, that's just come out that is released for the Sony mount. It's actually come out for Canon and Nikon as well, and it's a 1.8 lens, but it gives you this lovely sort of soft look about it, and it's now available to order. I think they're saying it's expected July the 11th. And I found another image here where you can get some more images about how it looks. And there's a video you can go through. And like I said, I've got the links for these in my page. But it does give you quite an interesting sort of look, that it's very, very soft. And I suppose that's why they call it velvety, because it does give that velvety type look. To be honest, I probably wouldn't go with this sort of lens because I could do this easily in software anyway. But if you are trying to get it exactly right in camera, it's an interesting lens, and they're saying it's going to be around about $500. But again, it's another lens that now is being adapted to Sony, so other lenses now are starting to come on board as well. So, you know, that's an interesting thing that they're clearly now starting to support us with other lenses. On the firmware updates, there's another firmware update for Metabones adapter for the A9. Make sure you do get this update because it will help with all your focusing issues. So if you have got adapted lenses and you're using the Metabones adapter, make sure you do update the firmware to this latest version that has just come out as well. Apparently it solves a lot of issues that were there too. This is a really great image because I actually found this on Sony Alpha Rumours. I don't know if anyone else saw this, but these are all of the 50mm lenses that are available for Sony. It's amazing when you look at how many there are. It's incredible. I'm not going to list them all, but they're all listed sort of down here that you're talking about, which is the 52.8, the 51.8, the Loxia 50, the Zeiss 55, Samyang 50, Sony 51.8. There's an APS version here, which is the 2.4, Zeiss 51.4, Rockinon, Zeiss Tout 50. I mean, there's that many 50mm lenses for Sony, which cracks me up when I looked at this and I thought, my God, there's so many of them. So you can have a look at that, and I've put that in the link description down below, so you can have a look at that because it's really interesting that they've there's so many 50mm lenses. Like, please now start giving us some others like the 135mm or something like that, which hopefully will come fairly soon. So that's an interesting thing that you can all look at. And the questions keep coming in. I'm going to go back to them all, guys. The other interesting thing is now that Sony is now the only manufacturer of QXD cards, so they've now got the market tied up, basically, because Lexar has just gone out of business. Sony now is the only company to do QXD cards, so that's really good for Sony, I suppose. I'm not sure if it's good for the market because I'm not sure whether the prices will go up. But it's interesting how now Sony are the only ones that are releasing that. I've never used Lexar cards, so I can't comment on what they are. I've always used SanDisk, to be honest. And just recently I bought the new Sony for my A9 because that was quicker than the SanDisk card. So I've got the new Sony that came out. But yeah, it's pretty sad that Lexar have actually closed and shutting down manufacturing. But it's certainly going to make a difference with QXD. So where the prices will go up, I'm not sure. But I just thought I'd mention that. Another interesting article that I've put on here for you to look at, and I get this all the time, and I will talk about this when we go to my business side in a couple of weeks. But this is an interesting article on Petapixel that talks about how to make your photos look awesome on Facebook, because Facebook compression sometimes can look terrible. You can have a lovely image, and then by the time you upload it to Facebook, the compression they use makes it look awful. So what this does, it gives you what they're saying are the best settings to have for your compression on Facebook, and it takes you through a whole series of things that you actually set up to do that. So I've listed this for you as well, in case if you are having issues with your images that you're putting up to Facebook. So you can let me know in the description too whether you are actually having issues with that as well. But I've put that in the description box there for you too. And the other thing is too, lastly, for news and rumours, Sony have announced the new 20 megapixel 1-inch sensor. Well, they're saying it could be for the RX100 V1. So that could be a really amazing camera if this is true. I've heard nothing but good reports about those cameras, so they're just going to get better and better and better. So if this is true, it could be an amazing camera if it's released. But it's just a rumour at this stage. But they have announced it, but they're not quite certain where this sensor will actually be used. So let me just go back through some of these questions. Let's have a look. Let me bring back to me so you can see my ugly big head. And then we'll come over here and come back to some questions. So let's have a look. Oh yeah, that's true. Mel was saying about the 6D too, and that there's no audio jack out of that as well. That's one thing I forgot. Yeah, they've sort of done a bit like the Sony A6500. There's no microphone output out of that camera. Again, I think that's crazy on a full frame camera. Like, there's no reason why body size you couldn't have put that on there. The other thing too is, we were talking about the new 6D. The other thing too is using software stabilization is not a good thing. You can do that in your software anyway. It's no different than what Final Cut or Premiere will give you. It's not hardware stabilization like the Sonys and the Panasonics and Olympuses give you. So again, they've shortchanged people. There's a lot of issues, and I think Canon sometimes are shooting themselves in the foot with what they do and what they release. What else have we got? Kieran said... Casper said, I have big problems which camera to use, A7, R2 or the A9. And you know what, Casper? I don't really. What I'm doing, I'm taking both. And for instance, in the weddings, I'm actually using the A9 for most of the day. But when I do the formal portraits outside, which I have time and I want those images to be the best possible image and also to have the most dynamic range and resolution, because they possibly could be blown up to massive posters, I'm using the A9. So for me, I'm using both. And if I'm going to do a studio shoot, or if I'm going to be doing a portrait session on its own, I'll still be using the A7R2. If I'm out and about, like doing a dance shoot, where they're jumping, doing fast things, I'll clearly be using the A9. So the cameras are for different purposes in that respect. I really do think you still need both. But that's just what I think. Marcus has said, but no Sigma and Tamron is really putting out great competitive, well-priced lenses lately. Yeah, they are, and I can't wait for Sigma and Tamron to fully support Sony. I'm really looking forward to that. Delta Dave said, I pre-ordered the 85 Lensbaby for my Minolta. Oh, okay, so let us know how it is when you get it. Keith said, Lexar cards never die on me. And yeah, a few people have said that to me. They've said that they've had no issues with the Lexar cards. I've never used them because I've always heard SanDisk were better, but yeah. Jerry Reed said, David, what would you recommend for the B1 Profoto to get? David, would you recommend for the B1 Profoto to get first for portrait work, softbox or umbrella, etc.? You don't know what to buy first. Oh, so Jerry, are you saying what softbox to get? If you haven't got the money, I'd probably just get an umbrella, a see-through umbrella, you know, your clear white ones. Or the best one I use most of the time is that 2-foot Octa. It's very, very small and it's not expensive. And that's the one I use mostly for the Profoto B1s, nearly in all the shoots. If you go back to the live shoot that I shot recently with the lake in the background, you'll see that is being used there. Keith Alexander said, but 2 Sony cards die and 2 SanDisk die on me. Okay, that's interesting. Oh, you know what, Keith? I've never, ever had a card that's died on me, ever. And like I said, I shoot so much, and I've never, ever had a card that's failed. So that's interesting. David Johnson said, also, David, the maximum shutter speed on the Canon is 1/4000th. Oh, really? Well, that's terrible. Oh, that's awful. Again, see, they've crippled it. I didn't know that, David. Marcus said the young guy who petapixel loaded his process on Facebook photos seems to be everywhere lately on items and articles I've viewed. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. Mel said, David, they also didn't mention that the electronic IBIS has a big crop. If I base it on the 800D crop in their ad video, it is huge. Oh, so it's a big crop as well. Mel said, do you use LED lights? Why or why not? Mel, if you go back to my live, it was I think it was last week, I went through all of the lighting that I use, which was flash and also LED lights. It was in the discussion for businesses, and you'll see I'm holding a Neo Roto light. So go back to that, and yes, I do. I use them extensively. I'm going to go through my wedding shoots soon, and I'll be explaining where I'm using LED as well as flashlights when I start going through how I shoot the weddings through this how to set up your business. So they'll be answered soon. Marcus said, did you read right, Sigma is bringing out a native Sony lens towards the end of the year? Yes, there are rumours about that, Marcus, so I'm hoping that's true. Kieran said, what do you use, the A6500 for you, or what do you use the A6500 for if you have the A7R? Oh, yeah. Well, I have got the A6500, the A7R2 and the A9, and I use the A6500 as well. I was showing the other day the belt that I carry, and I'm holding 2 cameras. I've got one on one side, one on the other, and I carry the A6500 usually on my belt up here. I like using all of them. There's no issue, like I said, I don't see an issue at all with using the A6500 in weddings, and I'm often using it for details and things like that because I love the touch to focus. I love that being able to get down low, use the touch to focus on the screen, click on it, and then it'll focus beautifully. And because I'm shooting Fusion, I'm constantly grabbing between all the cameras, so I'm often shooting video off the A6500. So I'm carrying them all the time. But even for photography, I've got no issue shooting the A6500 at all. Mel said, okay, thanks, David. Didn't see that our internet was down. Okay, yeah. So check that previous video and you'll see all about my lighting that I use. Keith said, cannot just eat a bag of... And they know it. They are going to get so much hate mail now. Oh, you're talking about the Canon. I know they are. It's crazy. I really don't understand why they've released that camera the way it is. It's just crazy. So what I might do, I might take you through a shoot because I want to take you through this shot that I've done recently. And again, I'm going to show you the before and after images. So I'll show you how they are basically, straight out of camera that, you won't see much with the editing. And then I'll show you the edited version. I'll sort of explain how I've done it just to give you an idea. So let's go over to here. I'm just going to scroll this down a little bit. So let's have a look at this. So this was a shot that I did in a field with canola, which I suppose you guys get canola in the States. I know you do in England. But this was a shot that I using canola. Now, like I said, I always underexpose a little bit. So please, when you're looking at this image, don't expect it to look perfect here because it is a little bit underexposed. And if I take these back again to where they were originally, you'll see how underexposed it actually is. So this is basically the original image, and I've just opened up the shadow a little bit to give a little bit of detail on the hair. This is the great part about using the A7R II because I've got so much shadow recovery, that I can pull everything out of this image to get it back to where I want it to actually get. So I'm not worried about the exposure, and I know that what I get underexposed, I know that I'm going to be bringing that back. So I do expose for that. Now, the reason why I did that, and I'll just explain it, is I didn't want to lose any of the detail that was in this shirt. I still wanted to keep the detail there. Now, this had an off-camera flash that was positioned over here. It was my Profoto. And you can see that she's lit up just from this sort of side on her face. So I had, like I said, it was on a light stand, and it had the Profoto unit through here with a grid on it that I showed you when I went through my lighting, and it had the light that just sort of lit up this sort of area, this side of her here. So it gave that lovely fall off on the side of her face, which gave her that shape. Now remember, you still want that because you want this sort of shadow that shows up through here. And that's the interesting thing with that light. I can sort of model exactly where it needs to go. So when I'm shooting, I always do shoot to allow that. So like I've said to you before, I always shoot for the highlights. And this is where a lot of people will make mistakes. They won't shoot for that highlight. The shadow recovery is much greater in the shadows than it is in the highlights. If your highlights are blown, you can only pull highlights back a little bit. You can't get much back. And that's in any camera. So I always go a little bit under. So it's just the way that I work. So when I'm shooting, I know what I'm going to go through when I'm editing. And then clearly I could, if I wanted to, I'll show you the edited one in a second, but because I went to black and white. But I could clearly just bring this up a lot if I wanted to, and drag the highlights back down if I wanted to, and clearly bring up the shadows a little bit as well, and pull this down. And then I can also go down and start to drag up the yellows and change them so I can get more of that canola type look too in there. So that's basically the editing. I'll bring this back so you can see what I'm doing. So I'll show you through here again. I'll just bring this back just so you can see what's happened. So this is straight out of the camera, as you'll see now. I'll drop the exposure back too. So that's as you see it in the camera. I'll just drag this down a little bit so you can see it a bit bigger. Like I said, I can drag up the shadows to bring back that detail that I've lost in the hair. So there's clearly no problem about pulling those shadows back. I haven't got an issue with that at all. And like I said, if I wanted to, I can even bring the highlights up and down as well and increase the exposure a little bit to get that nice bright look that that you need. And if you want to, you can target the yellows, because the canola's yellow, and if I wanted to, I could just sort of bring those yellows up or down by dragging these sliders to make it more yellow, or more red if I wanted to, or orange. And basically that's what I'll do. So I am looking at that when I'm exposing. And then the final image, I actually converted this to black and white, but I wanted to get this nice dynamic look. Now, I don't mind in this image to actually blow out the detail in the shadows, because I wanted a quite drastic look on this. And that's why I've deliberately let the blacks go and fill in a little bit in the hair. So I have lost a little bit of detail there. But if I didn't do that, it loses its contrast a little bit. So I wanted that really bright, vivid, or dark, mysterious look. And remember, this is my style, and this is what you'll sort of see all the time from me. I love a dark type of look, but I just wanted to sort of show you what I've gone for. The critical thing here when you're looking at this is you have to, like, I've maintained the highlights. I've maintained that highlight in that shirt. That hasn't gone because the detail's still there. We'll go to the next one. We'll go back to questions 2, guys, after we finish this. The second one here, this was the original. You can see again that I've exposed again for her shirt to not lose that detail in it. And when I've gone to retouched, I've brought the brightness up a little bit, and it's now nice and soft basically on her face. And again, she stands out beautiful from the flowers as well. If we look at this one here, you can see again I've underexposed a little bit again, because I didn't want to lose the highlights, and I knew what I wanted to do later on to bring that colour and contrast back. And I've given it a real kick in the yellows to bring up the brightness and everything in Lightroom here, to bring up the colours and everything back up again. I'll just scroll this so you can see it a bit bigger. Often when I shoot, I showed you ones in the last live discussion we did where I shot inside this forest, and I shot for the look that I actually wanted. Well, I've done this in this shoot too. When I shot this, I knew that I wanted to have this mysterious type look about it, and I wanted to get a twilighty type look. So I deliberately underexposed here, because the thing that I wanted to keep in this image was I wanted to make sure I didn't lose all the sky. If I'd exposed this as I probably should have, I would have lost. If I'd exposed for Ellie, I would have basically lost all of this sky, and it would have all gone. And I'll show you that, because I'll pull this exposure up, and you'll sort of see what will happen. If I start to pull it up so you can see Ellie properly, well, then I've lost all that detail and dramatic look in the sky that I wanted. So I had to expose for that. Now, there was a flash that is just off camera again, just through here, because it's lit her up a little bit. It's given her a bit of a lift. And again, it was just on a grid, because I didn't want all this to be lit up with the flash. So I've got the flash just off the camera there with a grid on it, and it is just lighting her up. Just a bit of separation from that background. If I didn't have that, she would have been incredibly dark. Now, like I said, I knew what I wanted to do with this when I edited it. I have added a couple of birds because, like I said, I wanted a twilight type look. And the results that I ended up getting from this was this. So it's given, like I said, a very sort of dark type look about it. And I love it. I mean, I just adore that look, and I've had so many hits off that on social media with it as well. Like I said, I've basically, I do like to sort of take a colour out. I do like to sort of make things very, the vibrance. I'll always grab the vibrance right down. If I bring this back, you'll sort of see where the vibrance is on this. Let me just drag it back down for you. If you look at this, you can sort of see here that I've dragged the vibrance right down. It's actually taken down to -61. Because I do love that type of image where it looks mysterious and dark. And again, this is my style. It's perfect for what I'm doing. You may not like this, but it's what I love, and it's what my clients hire me for. Even my wedding clients will hire me for this look. because it's a look that they love. Now remember, if you don't like my look, well, they won't hire me, so it's not an issue for me. I'll only work for people that like my look, and when they come and hire me, they've already seen what I've got. If they didn't like that look, or if they try to ask me to do a look that I don't want to do, I won't do it. I just wouldn't take the wedding or shoot on. So that gives you that look that I've actually gone for. If we go to the next image, again, this was shot the same way. So I just had her walking. I've exposed again for the ambient, which means I've exposed for the sky. And I've put a flash again that was just outside the area, just outside here, just to give her a kick out of that background. If I didn't do that again, she would have been completely lost. So you do have to try and get it as close in camera as possible to as good as the camera will get to enable you to get your image to go where you want to with your editing. And again, that's what I've done here, that when I've edited this, this is the final image that I've actually come up with. Again, I wanted that twilighty type look. Again, you can see there's some birds that are sort of coming in the background that I've added in. But the sky and everything is just as it is, and I've just added some tone and stuff by painting in Photoshop to add a little bit of light and colour for that red type tinge in the sky. But yeah, the sky was all there. It's just that I exposed for that and then brought that back by using recovery. So it sort of gives you an idea about the type of work that I love. And I love this, and I just love that type of look. Like I said, it's that twilighty, dark, mysterious type look that I love to go for. Remember, I just don't consider myself a photographer. I consider myself an artist, and that's the thing, and that's how I sell myself. I'll sell myself on being more of an artist. I like to go a bit slower, and it's the end result to me that matters. Yeah, so there you go. Now, let's go to questions, because I'm going to go back. Let me know if there's any questions about that too, guys, because I'll answer some questions if you have any questions on that as well. Mel said, do you think the A7 III will be a full-frame version of the A6 500? I want to go for the A7 full frame, but the A7R2 is not my kind of AF speed. Yeah, look, I wouldn't buy anything at the moment until the A7 III is released, because I think it may be a game changer, but we don't know yet. We're only sort of guessing about what those specs will be. But I certainly wouldn't be buying a camera unless you need one now until that is released, and then you can make a decision on which way you want to go. I think that the A7 III will be a mini A9, apart from the dual card slots and the fast frames per second, excuse me. Let's have a look at another question. Casper said, thanks, I edited some A9 RAW files and could not tell the difference between the A7R2 or A9. The A9 files are super sharp. Yep. Casper, I found that the A9 is definitely better in recovery about a stop, and I demonstrated that in one of my other videos where I tried to pull back from the shadow. If you're after extreme recovery, you can't beat the A9. The A9 is clearly better, but there's nothing wrong with the A9. The A7R2 is clearly better. There's nothing wrong with the A9 though. You can recover a hell of a lot in that camera, just not to the extent that you can with the A7R2. Also, the resolution is a killer in the A7R2. It's unbelievable. And like I said, if you are doing landscape or just portraits alone, I would still be using the A7R2. That's why I'm not going to sell my A7R2. Casper said spooky. Yeah, and it is. They were spooky, and that's, like I said, that's the type of image that I adore. But again, that's my style, and that's what people will hire me for. It's just the way that I am, and it's just what I love to shoot. Mitch said, got to take off, but always a pleasure watching you, David. Keep it up. I'll watch the rest later. Phenomenal pictures. Oh, thanks, Mitch. Thanks so much for saying that. So do we have any other questions, guys? Before we finish for the day, so let me know of any other thing that you'd like me to answer. I think I've covered everything else that people were having down earlier about the A6 500. Look, if you were thinking about purchasing the A6 500, you still can't go past the A6 500. I mean, that's probably I personally think that's one of the best cameras on the market for its price. I love the A6 500. It's my travel camera. I adore it. It's fantastic. The video is incredible. It's just beautiful. I love it. We were talking about cards before, about Lexar, which I've answered. So it looks like it might be about it. So any last questions, guys, before we finish for the day? Like I said, next week I'll be back onto the setting up your photography business. I'm going to go through bags, I think, on the next one, and how I carry all this gear around that I've got. But let me know if you've got any other questions. If you're watching later on, please leave the questions down below, and I always answer them. So if you have got questions to this later on, please leave that down below. It'll be interesting to see what people say about the banding. No doubt I'm going to get some haters commenting there, so that's going to be interesting. And please, if you haven't subscribed, give me a thumbs up and put it on notifications, because you'll get the notifications when I come on live. I've nearly been on live every day lately, going through this business stuff with you all. Casper's good night. Yeah, it's getting late for my American viewers, and it's really early for the England viewers. So, like I said, I'm just about to go and have lunch. Well, if there's no other questions, guys, we might call it a day. And I'll see you again. I always do this live show on the US Thursday at this time at around 7 o'clock LA time. And I think it was, I can't remember what New York time it was. But it's around this time anyway, every day. So Ben's asked about Susie. Is Susie busy this weekend? Susie is behind me. You can see Susie is back there. Ben, she's going to be used extensively in tomorrow's workshop. She's going to be a very tired girl in tomorrow's workshop. I'm doing a flash workshop tomorrow to a stack of people that are coming in doing that with me. I'm going to be teaching them off-camera flash. And Susie is going to be having a full day of being used as the model for tomorrow. So she better get a good night's sleep tonight. Carl said, have a good day. Ben said 10. All right, guys. Well, we might call it a day, and I'll see you again for the next live broadcast or the next video that I show in the next coming days. So I've still got a couple of live shoots that I can do. So please give me a thumbs up. It's 10 o'clock New York time. Yeah, so we started at 11. Yeah, so it's pretty 9 o'clock. Yeah, so it'll be the same time next week anyway, guys, if you wanted to catch me live. See you guys. Have a great day and have a great weekend. I won't be on live tomorrow because, like I said, it's Saturday here for us. We're in the future. It's like I said, I don't post things on the weekend. She's smarter than your average president. They're being rude about Susie. See you guys. Have a